And then, of course, there's Ben Shapiro, who always has his kippah on, markets himself as an Orthodox Jew, finds the time to talk about Lizzo and Cardi B. And personally, I think he'd be the next Thomas Jefferson if he had the chance.
Mm,
But that's a whole other
as
issue.
if.
Experience Karen Hunter in a completely different way. Karen Hunter is awesome. The podcast.
If you like me on SiriusXM Urban View Channel 126, you're gonna love me. And Karen Hunter is awesome.
The first thing I want to say is this is why it's important to know your history. Another role that I play is before COVID and things were a lot more fluid and there were different times. Even before Trump, like one of my main things was doing historical interpretation, not historic reenactment, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to see somebody play an enslaved person, go see Candace, go see Ben, and then go see these other fools that run around drunk. But I did interpret enslavement, 18th and 19th century, and I still do. I still do.
What
Um,
what does that look like, Michael?
so I focused on cooking. And so people would come into cabin, big house kitchen, other areas, and I laid it down. I would not let people off the hook. And I'd just be like, okay, we'd talk about whatever dishes I was making. I'd show them, but I'd say this isn't cute. These are people who lived and died in these spaces. I talked about the kitchen as a space of assault.
Mm,
I need not go any further. I would never let them out of my space without reminding them that the greatest forgive how this sounds, the greatest commodity in American history before the end of the Civil War was the womb of the black woman. They didn't want to hear that, but that's the point. I'm not there to make them feel good about enslavement. Never. I'm there to remind them. I remember, Karen, there was a gentleman in his brother-in-law and wife in South Carolina, and they were German. And we were doing this big thing, and there was a lady named Miss Kitty who was still around, an elder who was really good at historic. She was older, really good at historic interpretation. And there was this event in historic Bradenville in South Carolina with a lot of black interpreters that day. We were the majority in this space, which could be kind of rare. And so for us, it's community, it's bonding, and it's also truth telling and education. And so he comes to the kitchen and he goes, "How do you feel as African Americans talking about slavery and history of your ancestors? How does it make you feel?" And I immediately shot back, "How do you feel being the first generation born after the Shoah?" And he says immediately, "The Holocaust was a terrible thing and never should have happened." And there were some 4 or 5 white ladies, older white ladies from South Carolina, hanging around, and they just thought this was just so fabulous and fun and wonderful. This plantation nonsense. And of course, we don't do it. The museum doesn't do it to to romanticize that. But this is where it got deep. They're over in the corner, kind of like watching the situation. And I looked them dead in the eye, and I said, "Sir, I'm glad that you feel that way, but the reality is, the average white Southerner would never say the same thing about slavery." And their eyes rolled and they rolled out. And I'll say, I don't care. It's my job to disrupt those feelings of normalcy and romanticism that you have towards the oppression of black people. One of the things that you said earlier, this is before we had the term anti-black, at least for my vocabulary. What you said before I came on was so amazing when you was like, we have people are making billions of dollars off of hating us. Rush Limbaugh is in hell. I don't care how many dollars he made. But when he gave him that award, and like, why did you give him this Medal of Honor? What, for calling us the N-word in every which way? And by the way, this is not almost 48-year-old Michael Twitty talking. This is 18-year-old Michael Twitty talking. When I said one day, I said, let me turn on this Rush Limbaugh fool on TV and see what he's all about. And I said, it was the first and last time I ever watched that show. And you know why? Because he was making fun of Congressman Major Owens, who was giving a speech about reparations on the congressional floor. And Rush Limbaugh made a joke on his show, a whole riff about Africans being thrown to sharks. And they were all laughing. And to me, it was just like, I didn't see people. I saw wolves with blood on their teeth, cackling and
mm.
laughing. I just thought to myself, and he did that from the time I was 18 until what did he die about 4 or 5 years ago? That whole time, he made millions off of our suffering and our subjugation. And I just thought to myself, as somebody who does belong to multiple communities, if Rush Limbaugh had made a Holocaust joke, his ass would have been gone the second he made it. And that's why I hold the mainstream Jewish community
So
accountable,
wait,
and I
wait.
say
So
we got to
hold
hold up
on,
for
hold on,
this.
Michael,
Yes,
hold on.
yes.
Explain the Sig Heil Nazi salute of
Oh
Elon
my
Musk
God.
and all of them now doing the Sig Heil like it's something to do. Explain the swastika flags that are the Nazi flags that are flying throughout this country and people marching through this country talking about Jews not replacing them. Explain that energy being allowed to, and the ADL is wildly silent, in my opinion.
Right, right. But you can't say
Why?
black or woman.
Yeah. So why is that? I mean, Kanye's getting a lot of heat for putting a swastika on a shirt, but Elon Musk is not necessarily
I,
getting heat from the people that should be offended by this.
you know what? The thing about it is, we should all be offended by it. But
Yes.
the problem is that inequality of response. Why is I don't have no good blood for Kanye, but the fact of the matter, I can understand that the inequality of response means he gets to hold for burdens that this multi-billionaire doesn't. And okay, so let me go in on this real quick.
Okay.
Here's my little memo, because apartheid Clyde is almost the least of our problems. I see him right now. Well, how he wants to hold his hand is one thing on his arm, but this man literally is enacting something that you remember Richard Spencer, the Nazi that got punched?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So Richard Spencer is an atheist. He is which matters. I don't care if you believe in God or you don't, but it does matter because remember this white supremacy thing starts under the wolf's clothing of religious salvation
Christianity.
and ends up in the matter of total nihilistic apathy. So he said once upon a time, and it got scrubbed from the internet, we have to find a way to humanely euthanize the black race. And this is somebody whose ancestors, he admits, were slaveholders. Okay. So I looked at Elon Musk's approach to USAID, which, all of his things are personal, but it's also the legacy of him and his family being involved in Nazism, apartheid, etc. And I'm basically saying, I'm going to kill all of them. How are you going to kill them? I'm going to increase HIV. I'm going to increase mortality rates in birth. I'm going to increase violence against women. I'm going to increase all these social starvation, all these social issues which take down our mother continent, to which I have been to 9 countries personally. And once you go there, especially when you go into a warm environment like Ghana or Sierra Leone or Senegal, and the first thing you hear off the airplane is "Welcome home." People have you holding their babies. They're just like, I want you to touch my child. Hold my baby to your heart. Elders, the grandmamas come up to you, the grandfathers, they come and they bless you. So when I hear the S-hole country comment and other stuff, I take that personally. You're talking about my black family, which is all over the earth because of your nonsense. So I look at him and trying to kill us, and I'm like, okay. But then I want the Jewish community. Hear me out if you're listening. Mainstream Jewish community. We have to hold Jared Kushner responsible. We have to hold Stephen Miller, who is definitely modeling his career after Goebbels,
How is that
and Heinrich
possible?
Himmler.
Is he's Jewish though, right? Make that
You
make
know something?
sense.
Yeah, he is
That makes
Jewish, but you know
sense.
something? What is our saying in the black community? All kinfolk, skin folk ain't kinfolk. He hates him. There's an immense tradition of self-hatred in marginalized communities, and the way it manifests is always ugly. And then, of course, there's Ben Shapiro, who always has his kippah on, markets himself as an Orthodox Jew, finds the time to talk about Lizzo and Cardi B. And personally, I think he'd be the next Thomas Jefferson if he had the chance.
Mm,
But that's a whole other
as
issue.
if. Right.
I
Child.
didn't say nothing. You said something. I didn't say a word. I'll let that oak sit with your shade tree. Listen, but here's the problem. He's trying to convince people He wants to like smoke us out by saying, Derek Chauvin should be pardoned. Well, he can't be pardoned on a state level. He could be pardoned for certain federal things, but not on the state level. But that's not even what's important. What gets me is that Ben Shapiro that if you're going to be a racist and be a jerk about it, please don't wear a kippah. Please don't wear your tzitzis, your strings. Please don't do any of that. Because what you do is you're going out in the world saying, I am stamping this as kosher to behave this way. Okay, so this is what I gotta say to Ben Shapiro. Atzor, which means in Hebrew, stop. Because you are violating several big principles. Number one, Dina del Makuta Dina, the law of the land is a law. What was laid down in judgment is the law, don't touch it. Number two, Jewish principle. Mipnei darchei shalom. You should be a pursuer of peace. You are not brought here it's especially the idea of trying to foment evil, violence, and disruption where there is none. And the third principle that he's violating, among many others, is the idea that you should not put a stumbling block before the blind. You should not create problems by, in other words, it means literally to harm someone who is sightless. But figuratively, it also means to create problems with people who don't know what they're talking about on either side, fomenting negativity, and also creating situations where you have an Elon Musk then amplifying this to create not just the street issue, but just creating injustice. This man murdered this man in front of the world. So you can't do that. And as far as I'm concerned, he should take that keep off his head and burn it.
Well, I think he's trying to goad the outrage. I feel like we have agents of chaos who are trying to create this environment for people to be outraged, and it's the way social media works. Social media works on outrage and being offended, and then everyone has an opinion. And I feel like they're trying to get us in the streets, and and we should not fall for it. It's a banana in the tailpipe. No. And even if Trump pardons Chauvin, there's nothing we can do about it. So going into the streets and protesting is not necessarily going to change the condition, even if he's pardoned federally, even if it's some show of some sort of, the way he pardoned all of the folk from January 6th, which we know was an insurrection. All of that is flying in the face of the Constitution, which they want to dismantle. They want to dismantle the government. They want to bankrupt this country. They want people impoverished because that's how the chaos is there to keep us scared. And then people like Miriam Bowser, they're going to take it away anyway. So stand for something.
Make them work for
something. It. Yes. People need to stand up in this time. So I appreciate the outrage, but how we move should be very strategic. And I'm concerned that we don't have enough folk thinking about strategy.
Something there's one thing I appreciate about us as a people. If it is, if it's way too much we don't nah, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. I don't think they understand it about us. We're not hot-blooded and reactive. We're actually very, very thoughtful people. I'll give you a little bit of African culture factoids for the day. So the word, white people think voodoo means to witchcraft, right? Vodou is both the Fa, and behind me you see my Fa thing. I'm a Fa descendant from the 17th century.
He has a quilt over his head
from Benin. So the word Vodou means both spirit, and it also means, by the way, if you break the word down, it means stop before you draw water. In other words, to be a spiritual person, traditional African religious system, is not to just jump into something because you feel a certain kind of way. It's to stop. Remember, the water is the boundary between us and the other side. And also water is the divine feminine. And so you're supposed to stop and have respect. So when you go to draw the daily water for the bath, for the cooking pot, for whatever, before you do anything, you go to the water's edge and you pause. And that's what we're doing. We are vaudou. We are going to the water's edge and we're pausing before we make our next move. Because whatever our next move has got to be strategic, like you said, and on point.
Experience Karen Hunter in a completely different way. Karen Hunter is awesome. The podcast.
If you like me on SiriusXM Urban View Channel 126, you're gonna love me in Karen Hunter is Awesome. Hey, this is Karen Hunter, host of the Karen Hunter Show on SiriusXM's Urban View. Karen Hunter is Awesome is an actual podcast to bring heat and energy and knowledge and power, a 1-2 punch that I don't think you get anyplace else. Tell the truth. Check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. You will not be disappointed.